I grew up sharing everything with my sister. She wasn't just family. She was my best friend, my confidant, the person I could laugh with for hours or cry on when life felt too heavy. Even as adults, that bond never weakened. We spoke daily, met every weekend, and carried each other's secrets like they were treasures locked away. When she got married, I thought of her happiness as my own. I was proud of her, proud of the life she had built, and I welcomed her husband into the family without hesitation. From the very beginning, Adil seemed like the ideal partner for her. He was attentive, responsible, and always eager to help. He knew how to make everyone laugh, how to make my parents feel respected, and how to keep my sister smiling. To me, he was more like an older brother than a brother-in-law. He treated me with kindness, asking about my work, offering rides when my car broke down, and even dropping off groceries for me when he knew I was too busy. It felt natural, like he was simply part of the family we had all been waiting for. But life has a strange way of shifting when you least expect it. I had gone through a rough breakup not long before my sister's wedding. I told myself I had healed, that I was moving on, but loneliness has a way of hiding in the quiet moments. I often found myself going home to an empty apartment, cooking meals for one, and scrolling through my phone at night, wishing someone would text me just to ask if I was okay. My sister had her new life, my friends were busy with their families, and though I never admitted it out loud, I often felt invisible. That's when I started to notice the small things Adil did differently around me. At first, they seemed harmless. A compliment on a dress, a remark about how strong I had been through my breakup, or a thoughtful question about whether I was eating well. It wasn't unusual, he was kind to everyone, but there was a warmth in his eyes when he spoke to me, something that lingered longer than it should have. I brushed it off. After all, he was my sister's husband, and I would never imagine anything beyond that. Still, there were moments that unsettled me. One evening, during a family dinner, my sister left the room to take a phone call, and I suddenly felt the weight of his gaze on me. He didn't say anything, but I caught the way his eyes stayed longer than they should have. My heart raced, and I quickly looked away, convincing myself I had misunderstood. I told myself he was just being friendly, that my loneliness was making me read into things that weren't there. But those moments kept returning, subtle and quiet. When he asked if I needed help carrying groceries, his hand brushed mine longer than necessary. When he dropped me off one evening, he said, "You deserve someone who sees how special you are," before quickly changing the subject. They were small words, small gestures, but they began to plant seeds in my mind. I found myself thinking about them later, replaying them when I should have forgotten. And yet, through it all, I tried to hold on to the bond one shared with my sister. I reminded myself that no one had ever loved me like she did, that no relationship or moment of attention could compare to the trust we had built over a lifetime. I wanted to believe that the strange tension I felt was just my imagination, that it would pass if I ignored it. But deep down, I sensed something shifting, something I wasn't ready to admit out loud. I never knew then that these little moments, these glances, these words, were the beginning of a story I would come to regret for the rest of my life. It happened gradually, so gradually that I could almost convince myself nothing was happening at all. My sister had a work trip coming up, a short one, just 3 days out of town, and she asked me to stay at her house. She wanted me to help with the kids' routines, dinners, and school pickups. I agreed without hesitation. It was something I had done before, and I didn't think twice about it. The first night felt ordinary. We had dinner together, laughed at a silly TV show, and then I helped the kids get ready for bed. But once the house grew quiet and the children were asleep, it was just the two of us left in the living room. I planned to retreat to the guest room, but Adil started a conversation. He asked about my job, my plans, my dreams, questions that felt heavier than casual small talk. His voice was low, calm, almost intimate in the silence of the house. I found myself answering honestly, more openly than I should have. He listened intently, nodding, his eyes fixed on mine in a way that made it hard to look away. When I spoke about how lonely I sometimes felt, he didn't dismiss it or change the subject. Instead, he said, "I see you, you know. You're stronger than you think. Anyone would be lucky to have your kind of heart." It was such a simple sentence, but it left me speechless. My chest tightened, and I felt warmth rise to my cheeks. I excused myself quickly, blaming tiredness, but when I lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. His words played in my mind again and again. The next day, the tension only grew. He found excuses to linger near me, to share little jokes, to ask if I needed anything. At one point, he reached for a dish I was holding, and our hands touched. Neither of us pulled away immediately. It was just a second too long, but that second felt electric. I laughed nervously, brushing it off, but my heart was pounding. That evening, after the kids were asleep again, I walked into the kitchen to find him pouring himself a glass of water. He looked at me, and there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before, something bold, unafraid. "You deserve better than the way life has treated you," he said softly. My throat went dry. I wanted to tell him to stop, to draw a line, but my voice betrayed me. I stood frozen, unable to move or speak. Then, without warning, he stepped closer. Not enough to be inappropriate, but enough that I could feel the space between us disappear. My breath quickened. Every part of me screamed that this was wrong, but I didn't step back. He didn't touch me, not yet, but his presence felt overwhelming. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, and the room seemed to shrink around us. I should have said it. I should have ended it right there. But the truth is, I didn't. I let the moment hang in the air, heavy with all the words we weren't saying. And then, in a rush of weakness, I let him pull me into an embrace that lingered far too long. His arms were warm, steady, and for a fleeting second, I felt safe, cherished in a way I hadn't felt in years. When I finally stepped back, my heart was racing, and guilt washed over me instantly. I told him we couldn't do this, that it was wrong, but my voice lacked conviction. He didn't argue, didn't push, but the look in his eyes told me the line had already been crossed. Nothing would ever feel the same again. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, torn between two impossible truths: the love and loyalty I owed my sister, and the undeniable pull I felt toward her husband. It was the beginning of a storm I would never be able to escape. Once that line was crossed, there was no going back. I told myself the embrace meant nothing, that it was just a moment of weakness, but the truth is, it opened a door I wasn't strong enough to close. The next day felt different. Every glance, every word carried weight. I avoided looking at him for too long, but when I did, I found his eyes already on me. We didn't speak about what had happened, yet it lingered in the air between us, unspoken but undeniable. When my sister returned from her trip, I thought everything would reset. I wanted to believe that her presence would remind me of who I was and what I valued most. But instead, it only made the guilt sharper. Every smile she gave me, every time she thanked me for helping with the kids, felt like a knife twisting deeper. She trusted me with her home, her family, her life, and I was carrying a secret that betrayed all of it. For a while, nothing physical happened, but the emotional shift was impossible to ignore. Adil and I began exchanging looks when no one else was watching. Short conversations in passing carried meanings that only we understood. My phone would light up with messages from him, innocent words on the surface, but beneath them, something more. "How was your day? Did you eat? You looked beautiful today." Each one was a drop of water on parched soil, and I drank them in, even as guilt gnawed at me. Eventually, those words turned into meetings. At first, it was simple: coffee after errands, a drive under the pretense of discussing family matters. But soon the excuses grew thinner, harder to justify. One afternoon, when my sister was visiting our parents, I stayed behind under the guise of being too tired to join. Adil stayed as well. We both knew what we were doing, but neither of us admitted it. When the house was quiet, he reached for my hand, and I didn't pull away. That was the moment the affair truly began. There was no going back from it. We crossed every boundary that should have kept us apart. It was thrilling, intoxicating, and terrifying all at once. In those stolen moments, I felt desired, alive, seen in a way I hadn't in years. But as soon as it was over, the shame hit me like a tidal wave. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without feeling like a stranger. The secrecy consumed me. Every time I saw my sister, I felt like she could see right through me. When she hugged me, I stiffened, terrified that my guilt would give me away. I found myself avoiding her calls, making excuses not to visit as often. She noticed, of course, but she never suspected the real reason. She thought I was busy, or tired, or simply needing space. Her kindness only made it worse. Fear became my constant companion. Every time my phone buzzed, I panicked that she might see a message from him. Every time he called, I checked twice to make sure no one was near. My heart raced at the sound of footsteps, terrified we would be discovered. And yet, despite the fear, I couldn't bring myself to end it. The pull was too strong, the bond too entangled. But the excitement I once felt began to fade, replaced by a heavy sense of dread. I started asking myself questions I didn't want to answer. Was this love, or just loneliness disguised as desire? Was I really special to him, or simply convenient? Did he care about me, or was I just a distraction from his marriage? The more I thought about it, the more hollow everything felt. What began as a dangerous thrill was turning into a prison of lies. Every step deeper into the affair left me more tangled, more trapped, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came crashing down. It couldn't last forever. Deep down, I knew it, but denial is a powerful thing. I clung to the illusion that we could keep everything hidden, that somehow the secret would never surface. But secrets have a way of breaking free, and mine shattered the life I once knew. It began with little cracks. My sister started noticing how distant I had become. She asked why I avoided staying over, why I barely looked her in the eye. I mumbled excuses about work, about stress, about needing time for myself. She believed me at first, but the questions didn't stop. And then there was Adil, careless in moments when he thought no one was watching. A glance that lingered too long, a hand that brushed against mine at a family dinner, a comment that sounded too personal. To others, it might have seemed innocent, but to her, it became a thread worth pulling. The unraveling happened faster than I imagined. One evening, she confronted me. Her voice trembled as she asked if there was something going on, if I was hiding something from her. My heart nearly stopped. I denied it, of course. I smiled weakly, forced a laugh, told her she was overthinking. But even as I lied, I saw doubt in her eyes. She didn't press further that night, but I knew the seed had been planted. The end came a week later. Adil had sent me a message, short, reckless, and impossible to misinterpret. My sister found it. I don't know if he left his phone unattended or if she went looking, but she saw it. And in that moment, the truth no longer belonged to me. The confrontation was worse than anything I could have imagined. Her face, usually filled with warmth, was pale and cold. She didn't scream at first. She didn't cry. She simply stared at me like I was a stranger. Then the storm came, tears, anger, words that cut so deep I felt my chest tighten. She asked how I could do this to her, how I could betray the one person who had trusted me most. I had no answer. What words could possibly explain the inexcusable? Adil tried to intervene, tried to calm her, but his presence only fueled her rage. She turned on him with the same fury, accusing him of destroying their marriage, of making a fool of her. The house that had once been filled with laughter now echoed with shouts and sobs. And I stood there, powerless, watching the wreckage I had created. In the days that followed, everything crumbled. My sister stopped speaking to me. She told me she never wanted to see me again. Adil left the house, whether by choice or by force, I never asked. The family took sides, some avoided me entirely, others looked at me with quiet disappointment. The silence was almost worse than the anger. I had lost not only my sister but the respect and trust of nearly everyone I loved. Alone in my apartment, I replayed every moment that had led to this. The small choices, the ignored warnings, the excuses I told myself. What had felt like passion was nothing but destruction disguised as comfort. I had traded a lifetime of trust for fleeting moments of weakness. I learned the hardest way that betrayal doesn't end with two people, it spreads like wildfire, consuming everyone in its path. My sister's pain, my family's shame, my own self-loathing, they were all part of the same fire. And no matter how much I wished I could turn back time, the damage was done. Looking back now, I see the truth with painful clarity. The embrace, the secret messages, the stolen moments, they weren't worth it. Not even close. What I thought was love was nothing more than loneliness in disguise, and what I mistook for happiness was only the beginning of heartbreak. If I could give one piece of advice, it would be this: never cross that line. The temptation may whisper to you, it may make you feel alive, but once it's crossed, you lose more than you could ever imagine. I lost my sister, my family, and a part of myself I may never recover. And no fleeting passion, no secret thrill, is worth that kind of loss.